Good afternoon, everyone. Live from Silicon Valley, California. This is Success Sadhana. My name is JM, and I welcome you all to a program today where we continue our Superpower series. Today is Superpower number 6, Forgiveness, the Mother of Compassion. With our speaker today, Vaish, a veteran Bhakti yogi, author, and former monk. We are on 10 members on Zoom and another 10 members on Facebook. And I have got Shweka helping me out in managing social media today. Good afternoon, Vaish. Welcome back to another episode of Success Sadhana.
Thank you so much, Jam. It's just great to see you and hear your voice and to know I'm about to connect in with everybody. And welcome everyone who's joined so far. I saw a few names come across. I'm on my phone today because I'm traveling and I'm in Southern California, so I had to do a quick setup here. I hope you all can hear me. Jam, is it audible? Okay. So we're continuing with our special series about superpowers, and the topic of forgiveness is one that is very useful because it is a power to be able to forgive someone, even to forgive yourself at certain points, and it requires a higher perspective to be able to do that. It's not something that we can automatically do intellectually, although it's not bad to do that. There's a softness of heart that's required, also a very high perspective about what the purpose of life is and where we're all going. That is essential in having the wherewithal to forgive others. And we'll go into some of that today. It's also a premise of forgiveness that we'll go into quite deeply, and that is that it's for us, it's not for the other person necessarily. It's something that we do to relieve ourselves of carrying around this weightiness that comes from remembering what others have done to us or circumstances which have seemingly set us back, and it's not so easy to do. So that's why we're discussing today this topic of forgiveness. Does that sound okay to everybody?
Yeah.
All right.
Yes.
Okay. Excellent. So let's start off by attending to ourselves. Just here visiting quite a few people and noticing that everyone has some complexity in life. And it's really important for us to have a self-care program. One of the most important is how we deal with our inner world. And one of the aspects of dealing with our inner world is taking time to notice what's going on with ourselves, and also to try to feel that we're okay right in the moment, right now. If you notice, whenever we're feeling anxiety and we're going through something, that we're projecting what might happen. But if we come to the point of thinking, where am I right now? Who am I right now? Am I okay in this exact second, at this moment? The answer is always yes, I'm okay. So let's take just a minute for some self-reflection and a little bit of meditation. So if you're all with me and you'd like to try this, just close your eyes, sit up a little straighter than you were a second ago. Just extension without tension. Relaxing, but being aware, more aware than you were a second ago, because the mind tends to go from one place to the next. And that's its name. The name is called Chanchal, the mind. Chanchal means flickering or restless is a better word. So now just settle into a place where you can be here in the moment and breathe. And notice your breath and how it's sustaining you. Take a little bit deeper breath than you're used to. It helps you to relax and let out whatever tensions, whatever thoughts you have through your exhalation. We're all here in a safe space, taking time to better ourselves, even if it's by 1%. Just know that it's going to be okay. Everything's going to be okay as long as you notice that you're all right in the exact moment. Be aware that you're here right now, nowhere else, got nowhere else to go. And don't worry about the past. There's nothing you can do about it. Just let it be and be still here in the moment. And breathe. And now one of the ways of meditation is to bring a mantra into your mind space. And I'll say the mantra, and then you can reverberate it just using your inner voice in your mind. Nitai Gauranga. And I'll say it 3 more times, and then you can repeat it in your mind and keep bringing your mind back to the present moment by listening to the mantra in your mind. Nitai Gauranga. Nitai Gauranga. Nitai Gauranga. And now do it 3 times yourself in your mind and just totally focus on the mantra. I'll do it silently myself as well. And now I'll do it 3 times aloud, and you can follow me behind muted mics and also vibrate this mantra. Nitai Gauranga. Nitai Gauranga. Nitai Gauranga. Now just notice the difference between the silent mantra and the mantra you just vibrated with your vocal cords. Be aware that whatever sound you make helps to form your consciousness, and that the mantra refines the consciousness, cleanses the mirror of the mind. When we can see ourselves, we can also see how we're part of the complete whole, and how everything's where it should be at every moment. You can feel satisfied. You can stay in the moment and just appreciate that you exist. And breathe. And now just think of one person you're very grateful for in your life. And let that sense of gratitude pervade your consciousness. And breathe. And relax. And we'll say 3 more mantras. You can follow with me if you wish. Nitai Gauranga. Nitai Gauranga. Nitai Gauranga. Take a few more breaths just to stay on track with the rhythm of your breathing. Relax. Then open your eyes, rub your hands together, and come back into the Zoom room. Okay, so today's topic is forgiveness. And oftentimes just hearing the word causes a dilemma because it seems that if we forgive, we're giving up on rectifying something or someone. And one of the perspectives of this very healthy way of forgiving is that we don't have to give up doing due diligence in a given situation if it's called for. Not that we become a doormat or we just let everything go. But even as we're doing our due diligence, if it's necessary, we don't carry around that heavy sense of resentment. The word resentment goes back, it's two words, resent. Whatever happens that we don't like, where we feel we were out of control or we were taken advantage of or whatever it may be, then that's an experience. It happened. It leaves an impression in our mind. And then we might resend it. That's what resentment is. You're pushing the button again and again and bringing that back. So that's not necessary. You don't have to revisit that sense that you were hurt in a particular way, but you can deal with it externally while letting go. So let's talk a little bit more about it from the philosophical side. And we'll go to the first slide. And there's a few aspects to this that can be helpful and informing regarding the way we look at, we call the philosophy of forgiveness. So first of all, forgiveness, it's for you, not for them. Keep that in mind. Do it for yourself. It sounds counterintuitive because I think that I want to express, how this made me feel and so forth, which may be a part of getting over it. But still, remember, this is healthy to not have to carry around resentment. And the next one down says, resentment is like drinking poison and hoping the other person will die. So we're the ones that are taking on this caustic substance of resentment. And does it affect the other person? Not necessarily, especially if they don't have an awareness of what's really going on. And the top right, it's very similar to the others. Forgiveness is not condoning. It doesn't mean that you're just letting it slide. Even if you forgive, you can still deal with the situation to try to rectify it. And finally, as a kind of introspection, because oftentimes we forget that we may have offended other people, even unknowingly. So if we ask ourselves, if people forgave you only as much as you've forgiven them, how would you be doing? If people forgave you only as much as you've forgiven them, how would you be doing? And it's kind of amazing, isn't it, when somebody actually forgives you? Because you're like, how did you do that? Well, that's what we're talking about today. And in the ancient wisdom literatures, forgiveness is considered to be a very high-minded quality. It's not something everybody has. Most people are forced to resent. And we get forced by the state of our own consciousness. We have to do it. And we have very little control over it, similar to anger, which is its cousin. But there is a way that one can rise above that. So let's look at the next slide. How to forgive. So think of it as a practice. And these are a few of the tenets, and we'll go more deeply within them. Empathize. Empathy is looking into the other person's life. What are they going through? Pathy means to feel, and M means in. If you can't forgive fully, try it for 1 day or 2 minutes. This is a really helpful technique because the sense of giving up my claim over keeping the resentment may seem very drastic, but if I just say, like, let's try it on, see how it works. I'll do it. I'll do it just for a while. Try it for one day or even 2 minutes. I'll see what it feels like just to forgive. That seems safe, that you're not giving in or condoning if that's what your mind is telling you. The other is the next is 3. Don't wait for an apology. If you wait for the other person to apologize before you forgive them, you could be waiting forever. Besides, then you don't get the opportunity to practice forgiveness and preemptively forgive before somebody else comes and claims the high road and said, I apologize. Another point, and this is true with so many things in life, isn't it? Let's mark this one, number 4. The sooner you begin, the less painful it is. I'll bet we could come up with a list of things that come into that category. The sooner you begin, the less painful it is. Just do it early-ish, so you don't have to carry it around with you for a long time, and it doesn't weigh on you and your whole life and your existence. Okay, another one is sort of a pithy saying, but it does help. Any of these that we keep with us can be very helpful in times when we need to forgive. Be kind instead of right. There's so much impetus to want to be the one with the last word. I got it right. Nowadays, we see on many of the social channels that people want to be right, and when everyone wants to be right at the same time, there's an ongoing quarrel that seems to never end. And what's the difference with many of these things? It doesn't make that much difference. So if you just decide ahead of time that I'll be kind rather than right, let them have it. If it's not a huge thing, you can get yourself out of 80, 90% of these dilemmas where you're holding on to something because you wanted to be right. And number 6, say out loud to yourself, I forgive you. Now this one, and we can come back into the Zoom room for a minute. This one, JM, as you know, I've mentioned this before. Many of you heard me say this, that you can use it when you're driving, especially. Have any of you ever had a situation when you're driving and somebody annoys you the way they drive? It can also almost feel like they've threatened your life because they came too close, and you think, oh, that could have ruined not just my whole day, but maybe my whole life. And there's this upsurge of a sense of indignity and anger that comes in the heart. Has anybody ever had that happen, even a little bit? You're going to have to
Always
give
with
me a...
me.
Oh, okay, Rashmi, thank you. That happens a lot. Okay, thank you. Thank you for being vulnerable. Anybody else? Okay, just Rashmi and me. You could always use your thumbs. I'm getting used to seeing how everybody's responding from my telephone here instead of my screen. And I haven't become completely successful with it yet. Yeah, there, now I can see you. Okay, thank you very much, Manu. Thank you very much, Wisam. I feel
I
better,
have a
yes.
quick thing, Maharaj. So this morning itself, I was thinking there was something happened in my office. One of my colleague did something wrong. So I was thinking to myself, why I'm getting so annoyed as if I am so perfect. So I mean, I was thinking the same thing today, that why this happens to me. If something does something wrong, I feel so, like, angry and as if I am the perfect, which is not the case, but still.
No, that's a really good point you make. And I've found it in self-searching in myself, oftentimes when I feel a little indignant towards somebody, and I look back at myself and I say, have you ever done this? And if so, then why do you have the right to feel so indignant towards the other person? I'll give you an example. Like I have in my head, I'm a very pedantic driver. If I'm going to turn right, I turn on my right turn signal. If I'm going to change lanes, I put it on for always. But then I could ask myself, always? Did you ever miss it once? That, I have to admit, I probably have missed it once or twice over many years. Then I can ask myself, okay, the person I'm annoyed at in front of me who just changed lanes without putting on the signal, could that be their one time out of 30 years of driving? And like, yeah, if you admit that, then you say like, okay, then you're not perfect. And they also, have their quota, something like that, right? You can look at yourself, like you just said, and notice, like, am I perfect? And so the way of pointing at somebody, as we say, then you have several fingers pointing back at yourself. So that's very helpful. Thanks for that comment. Really good. Okay, let's take a few reflections so far. There's been some philosophical points here. They're nuanced. See if anybody can reflect back any of the points, and let's think of the nuance in them. Go ahead,
So,
Wisam, I can tell you. Yeah.
Sorry. Actually, in that regard about the driving thing, it happened to me so many often times. And it's like when I am visiting some place, another country, another city, I will be like, okay, I'm not sure if this is the signal or this is the turn that I need to make. So I'll put my signals to turn. I'll be like 2-3 turns ahead of where I should be. So I slow down, move fast. So in my current locality here, there will be visitors from other states. And I can tell they are from California or Nevada or somewhere. And do the same thing. I'll be upset about doing so. I mean, it's like that would have been me a couple of years back when I visited that place. So I felt like, okay, just cool down. Welcome my visitor here.
You make such a good point, Wisam, and there's a way that cultural differences in the way we do things, it takes practice at overlooking those. During the pandemic, I had a lot more interaction internationally with people and working on projects. And I just noticed everyone has a different way of doing things. And it requires the kind of insight that you just proposed. Consider, like, do people do things differently elsewhere? Does everything have to be my way? And, am I coming off like this to other people the way they come off to me? Really nice. This is perspective building. It really helps a lot. Rashi, you had another point.
Yeah, I have a question, Maharaj. So, you made a point about forgiveness. So it's okay, we can forgive like once, twice. But what if we are working with somebody or we are living with someone and they keep repeating the mistake or maybe something else and they keep hurting you? So how many times would you forgive them? Or will that be always? Or I mean, I'm little stuck there.
3 times. Well, now I'm making a subtle distinction between forgiving somebody and doing due diligence. So there may be a way in which you have a family member, or you have a colleague, or let's say in any circumstance where you have to be there and it's an ongoing situation and somebody becomes chronic at doing types of things. There is a conceivable way of dealing with it that is methodically. You have to deal with the situation, but dispassionately. And dispassionately means that you forgive them. You don't take it personally, what they're doing. You take it as, okay, this is the situation. This person is at discord, and let's talk about how to rectify the situation. But you could do that. It's possible to do that without feeling that sense of being violated by the person. So that's one of the aspects of forgiveness that I'm proposing, that you could do things and stay equipoised inwardly. And this is one of the main points that Krishna makes in the Bhagavad Gita, that these types of violations are going to come up all the time in this world. There's these 3 aspects of the world that are mentioned in the wisdom literatures called Adhyatmic, Adhibautic, and Adhidaivik. There's ways that other living entities get into our space and they do stuff that really is annoying. Other living entities means insects, animals, people, trees. They can fall in your house. And then there's natural disasters. The environment we're in here is not that stable. It's always changing. And we don't know from one minute to the next, one day from the next. We can't count on it. That's called Adhidaivik. And then Adhibautic means our own bodies. Our own bodies and minds are not that reliable. I mean, they're amazingly reliable in one sense, that, hey, I didn't even know how it's going on, but it does. but I still can't take it for granted. And then there's going to be changes. Some skin rash comes up or anything could happen. So we have to learn, Krishna says in the Bhagavad Gita, to stay equipoised even amidst these changes that take place with Adhyatmic, Adhibodhic, and Adhidaivic. JM, looks like Linda left a comment there. I saw that come across my screen.
Yeah. Linda says, I heard this statement the other day and it gave me some comfort. It said, having a soft heart in a cruel world is courage, not weakness. I often have heard people say to me, how could you forgive them after what they did to you? And it sometimes made me feel like I was weak. But as a statement said, it takes internal courage to let things go. And she's receiving a lot of love from people.
Yeah, it's a kind of strength. And you mentioned soft-heartedness, and I think of this description of water. Water is a inexorable force. It goes around, it goes through, it goes under. There's ways in which it can become unstoppable. And water is one of the most, well, I could say, it's hard to say it's flexible. I guess we could, but it's altogether liquid, right, in its natural state. And it is a way that we can think about working with the world and with these sticky situations, is to be like water, to go around it, to go under it, not to become stopped by that awkward situation that we have when we feel that we've been disrespected in some way. Nice, really great point. Jam, any other comments that came up? I seem to have noticed something.
Yeah, Manu just shared beautiful, Linda. Thanks for sharing. That was the only comment.
That's nice. Yeah, it's good. Thanks for leaving those kind of comments, everybody, because then it gives the sense of how everyone's interconnected here and hearing what everyone else is saying. Really nice. Thank you. Let's do a few more slides, Jam. So this is a whole topic. These are I'm going to go over these really quickly again, because I think there's a lot of takeaways here in this list. I won't drill into each one of them, but just consider these again for your reflections coming up. Empathize. If you can't fully forgive, try it for 1 day or 2 minutes. Don't wait for an apology. The sooner you begin, the less painful it is. Be kind instead of right. Say out loud to yourself, I forgive you. Yeah, that's where I kind of took an off-ramp. I had mentioned that when I'm driving and there's some situation that could cause a sense of resentment, I immediately say, I put up my hand like this, I say, I forgive you. So it's so common. My friends, my wife knows I do it. And, friends, if I'm driving the car, they go, okay, do it, do your thing. I forgive you. And it's amazing how there's a moment of cognitive dissonance. You're saying one thing, thinking another, because in the heart, there's this sense of like, get him. And people do that all the time. It's like, I got to get that guy. I'm going to really get him, and they'll maybe, clip their car or something like that. And then, they can end up in jail, or a lot worse could happen just from one little impulse like that. If you just learn that there's this escape valve, you have the right at any time. Nobody can stop you except yourself to just say, I forgive you, and let it go. You don't have to deal with it after that. It's no longer your baggage to carry anymore. And it's 3 little words that are so powerful. And if you practice it and you say it out loud, your mind's going to go, wait, what? You're going to forgive that guy? It's like, too late. I already did it. It's done. We're on to the next thing. I can still focus on what my main goal in life is and not take this off ramp. Okay, so those are 6 items to remember. And going back to the points about that this is a practice. You actually have to practice. It doesn't come automatically. So practice forgiveness. And there's a sense of empathy and compassion, because when you do have that cognitive dissonance, and your mind's saying, well, wait a minute, why are you forgiving this person? Why aren't you attacking? Then you can then rise to a higher level of thought, which is like, okay, I'm empathizing with these people. How would you do that? I mean, it's conceivable that the person is going through something, and that's why they acted in that way. And you could even develop a sense of compassion for what other people are going through. This is a main point that comes out in the wisdom literatures. There's a famous verse in the whole section on meditation, actually, in the Bhagavad Gita, that says, Atma pamyena sarvatra samam pashiti Arjuna, sukham va yadiva dukam sayogi paramo mataha. So you heard the word yogi in there, and parama means the best. And so the mataha, here's my proclamation, that the best of all yogis, those who have a spiritual practice, are those who know how to empathize with others, because they've been through it themselves, they've made mistakes themselves, and they then realize that, okay, we're all, as the old saying goes, in the same boat. And one can then have a sense of empathy. And it's not condescending. It's this sense that, we're all going through the same stuff, and we've all had ups and downs. Okay. So let's look at the word itself. The definition of it is the strength to give up the desire to punish. That's one of the definitions I really like. The strength to give up the desire to punish somebody else. And so the two words, forgive, stuck together. For means completely, and give means pardon. So can you pardon somebody completely? Do you have that strength? I already talked about what empathy means, and here's a definition given. Hope I'm not putting my fingers on your the ability to feel for another person's situation. So M means within your heart, pathos means feeling. And all these words, sympathy, apathy. Apathy means I just don't care how other people feel. Sympathy means I'm in sync with them. And so this pathy, we're feeling sentient beings, and therefore we have the sense, and we can become more refined in how we feel for others. So this is one of the points, is to align our feelings in such a way that we're in harmony with what's actually going on in the world. So in compassion, we talked about that word. Kam means with or together, and pati means to suffer. So I found this interesting also. Just the definition of it, how we break it down, suffering together with others. People go through things all the time. Just this morning, I was talking to a couple of people who are going through some hard times, and, the ability to be with them and to feel their suffering, it's so helpful for others, that's for sure, to be able to come to that level of appreciating that we're all going through things. And this is part of forgiveness, is to have this sense of compassion, or we're together, we're suffering. Part of the way people express their suffering is they lash out at others. We don't have to do that. So here's a few tips. Now, my favorite little friend up there on the left-hand side, that's a grudge. Just imagine his grudge. I know it's a honey badger. Honey badgers are ferocious little creatures. They look like wrestlers or something like that. They have very sharp teeth. They're tenacious. Yeah, you don't want to carry one of those honey badgers around. So similarly, don't carry grudges. Drop them off somewhere where they can have a free run. Let them go back to the wild where they belong, and don't carry them around. Don't bring them in your house. Don't put them on your social media. Get them out of your life. Just don't carry them around. You'll get scratched, bitten. Everything will come back to you in a very harsh way when you carry grudges around. If anybody here has ever carried a grudge, I'd like to hear about it. And then you can just drop it off. And then remember that forgiveness is your choice. And Is it conceivable that somebody who's offended you in some way actually has some good qualities? That's a little stepping point along the path of forgiveness, that it's like, okay, yeah, they're not all bad. They do have some good qualities. Sort of starts to open the heart. And then this other point, which is practical, is when you must express moral outrage to express your love, forgive simultaneously. So there's a point that we actually care for people. We want to express that how it's making me feel, what you're doing. And we may have a sense of, this is important for me to express. But can you simultaneously forgive? That's a question, really. Is it possible to express yourself, and it may even reach the point of moral outrage, but can you do it and forgive simultaneously? So that's a question on the floor here. And Jam, let's see. Polly, thank you very much. Said yes. That's nice to know. And what else do we have? Aurelia said, of course. I like that. Go ahead, Jam.
The essence is sometimes you get depressed when you empathize so much. How to handle it?
Could you repeat that, please?
Sometimes you get depressed or affected if you empathize so much. How do you handle it?
You get depressed because you empathize so much with other people. Well, yeah, I can really relate to that. Thanks for bringing that up. That it's really important to have a spirit. It's very important to have a spiritual practice. For instance, I have a daily practice where I'm able to absorb myself in some practices like mantra meditation. I do some very deep reading, get absorbed in some of the literature that I find to be extremely helpful for daily guidance in my intelligence and so forth. And I also, have other lifestyle adjustments that I've made in my life, as far as the way I eat and making sure I take care of myself and so forth. All of these contribute to balance. And with a deep spiritual practice every day, even if it's not for hours and hours, even a small, consistent spiritual practice is necessary. And I think I mentioned this at the beginning of the hour. It's necessary to bring us to a higher perspective. We are not our bodies. And wait for it, breaking news, we're also not our minds. It's hard to know sometimes because there's a way in which the mind seems like us. Because I'm so absorbed in it, I think, oh, that's me. But actually, you can observe the mind. You can step back from it and notice that it's going on even as you're watching it. And when you have a spiritual practice, one of the essential benefits of that is you're able to see the difference between yourself and your body and your mind. Even if you can do that by 1 inch. Question someone asked a long time ago that I really appreciate was, how far above the water do you have to be to not drown? How far? Well, maybe 1 inch, as long as you can breathe. And, the world is like a churning ocean. And when we're right in the middle of it, it's very hard to have perspective, and we get pushed this way and that. But with a spiritual practice, you can rise above the ocean, the churning, and you don't have to get overwhelmed. With despondency, that kind of compassion that you feel, it's well balanced, because as Krishna mentions, compassion in the material world sometimes is misplaced. If I don't have a sense of the difference between the person and the body. One of my teachers, who I never actually got to meet, but is the teacher of my teacher. He was born in the 1800s. But he used to say that he told a little story of somebody who's drowning, and then there's a group of people say, oh, save him, save him. And some hero jumps in, swims over, and then brings the person's coat back. And everyone's jaw drops and say, what happened? What'd you do? He's saying, no, I got the coat. And he used to say that actually we have to know where compassion is best applied, because the body and the mind are like an external dress, like a coat. And so when we have this compassion for the actual spiritual being that's within the body, there's not as much of this sense of being overwhelmed with, I forget the word you used. Was it depression or despondency? No, that's neither of those were that. Jam, can you remember? What was it?
Depressed.
Depressed, yeah. Yeah. Okay, let's see if there's a few more comments.
Yeah, Mariam follows up. She's saying, great point. I love what you have said. I wonder what will happen if we can forgive someone wholeheartedly and wish them the best and be happy for them and absolutely no grudge. But suddenly there become a glitch in life. You cannot forgive the specific moment. You cannot forget the specific moment of accident in your whole life. No grudge, no expectation, nothing is there. Just you absolutely cannot forget the exact moment, no matter hard you have tried. You have peace and you live your life fully, but not be able to come back to the moment of life before that accident. Is this possible?
Is it possible that there's a sticking point? Is that what
Yeah.
you're saying? And then,
Yeah.
and that there's certain point yeah, that's possible. I gave a talk a couple of weeks ago, not to quote my own talk here, but it was based on research I had done. I'm not quoting myself as an authority. I'm quoting what I researched. It was about grieving, as I attended a memorial service, a one-year memorial for someone's passing, and they asked me to give a talk about grief. And it's, in one sense, we take on all of these experiences we go through in life. It's not that you can just expunge them from the record completely. That, there's a composite of all the things that happen to us. When your mother passes away, you feel it. There's a cut of that psychic umbilical cord, no matter what your relationship with your mother is, and so forth. That's just an example. But so the saying was with grief is that you move forward with it, not that you just leave it behind and try to leave it behind completely, but there's a sense that you reconcile it. And that reconciliation has to do with knowing that I'm just passing through here. The scar, the emotional scar that I have really is on my psychic body. And even the psychic body is not me. It's part of my external existence, my interface, if you will, with the external world. But I'm something that's completely separate from that. So moving forward with it means there's this sense that I've been through these things, it's there, but the impact of it can lessen over time. And it can be more of a lesson than it is a trauma in due course of time.
Mariam, was that helpful?
Yeah.
Okay,
Yeah.
Thank you. Okay, JM, are there any other comments in the box?
No, that was when Marilia did mention, I think maybe mental, spiritual, and physical. It might have been reference to something you were saying.
Mental, physical, spiritual. Yes, that's very important. Thanks for bringing that, Marilia. So we have these three aspects to our existence, and in the Sanskrit ancient wisdom literatures, there's a word that describes our self, and it's called Atma. And sometimes, because we have such an seemingly intimate relationship with our bodies and minds, I mean, who doesn't think I'm this body? Everybody thinks that this is who I am. If you ask a cat, who are you? The cat's going to go, I'm a cat. And if you ask a squirrel, who are you? And it's like, what are you talking about? I'm climbing a tree. I'm a squirrel. And we similarly feel like, yeah, I'm this body, but we're actually not. And that is, we're so convinced of that the ancient literatures say, well, your body is your Atma, your mind is also Atma, but your self, or your what we call the spark of consciousness that illuminates the body. That's the real Atma. But because we identify so much with the other ones, it seems like they're all Atma. But in due course of time, there's a way in which we're able to notice the difference. I'll give you an example, if I may. I was, a few very interesting verses that I was looking at when I was traveling. And one of them was from an ancient literature, like from thousands of years ago, and it talked about geology, if you can appreciate that. And it was saying that an expert geologist can discern where there's gold in any earth formation just by looking at it. It's like, oh, likely the gold is right here. And he said, okay, dig and find it. And a person who's not trained in that science can't find it. So then it goes on to say, similarly, if you're trained in knowing the difference between the body and the soul, you're able to actually discern the difference. You're able to see the difference because of the way you've trained your mind. And if somebody's not trained in that, you just think, oh, my body. And now I've forgotten which question I'm answering, JM.
It was just on the reflection of all three mental aspects we looked into.
Yeah. So, and I think she responded, correct me if I'm wrong, but when we're talking about living a balanced life as a way to actually be equipoised, because we are affected by our body and mind, even when we're spiritually advancing. So we have to be careful as we move about the world and not to just take things for granted. We have to maintain them carefully.
You have one more analogy shared by Sankari.
Oh, yes.
She says, heard it from a Bhakti Yoga practitioner. Some students in a class were asked to carry the number of potatoes equal to the number of persons they held some grudge against in the class. They were asked to carry those potatoes in a zip bag and carry them everywhere all the time with them. After a few days, the potatoes began to rot and smell. Students went to the teacher and said they were tired and disgusted of carrying those rotten potatoes all the time. The teacher then said, that is the effect of grudge on ourselves.
Wow. That's amazing. Just thinking about it, isn't it? I know, ways that we can experience the consequences of certain kinds of action in a test situation can be really helpful like that. I mean, just the mental exercise of doing that reminds us of how painful it is to carry around grudges. I know sometimes in high school they have these mechanical babies that young people can carry around and say, like, okay, here's what it means to get pregnant, have a child, and then carry it around. And that metaphor in the Bhagavad Gita, and when Krishna says, if you don't interact with the material nature properly, then what's born from it is called dukkha, or misery. He gives that metaphor. It's born from that. So there is a way in which we can look at the consequences of things. It's so helpful, having that sense of causality. What I do matters. It results in something. Think of the word consequence. There's a string of results that come from every action that I perform here in this world. Thanks, Shankari Kaur. Really helpful stuff. Okay, Jem, I think there's about 2 more slides, if I'm not incorrect. Drop off your grudges. Forgiveness doesn't mean that you have to make a wrong a right. It means you release yourself from the resentment you feel towards the offender. I think that's kind of a summary statement to most of what we've been talking about today. Is that the last one? Okay, now time for questions. Questions are at the top of the list. If you can ask a question, that's the highest level of difficulty on a scale of 1 to 10. Asking a question is a 10. Or if you have a reflection from anything we talked about, that's about a 5. And you can either put it in the chat or you can just bring it up live. James, you start. You'd say one thing that you remember from what we're talking about so far.
One thing which I would like to improve on would be, like, whenever, as you mentioned, you say, I forgave you. When something happens, I use a different term. I rather say hero, hira, lal, kind of, which basically means maybe somebody who's very smart, kind of. I was thinking one thing, I should change it. Instead of saying that word, I should say, I forgive you, and start feeling the peace resulting from it. So that's one thing I'm taking.
Okay. What language is that?
It's Hindi, I think. Yeah, Hindi.
And it
And
means
it just
what?
means, it's a title of a film, which basically is somebody trying to be smart, though he's not, kind of.
I see. So it's more sarcastic.
Yeah.
Yeah. If you clearly say I forgive you, has a different impact for sure. Look, Subhadra's calling in from Nuuanu Valley in Hawaii, and she's had her hand up for a while. Let's call on her.
Yeah, please.
Thank you. I don't know why I don't have those at the bottom of my screen, but anyway, I was thinking that the people that seem to have hurt me the most are the people who seem to have had the most trauma in their lives. And so a lot of times what they do to hurt me is, I think, a way of protecting themselves, like either, you know, by their speech or their actions. But a lot of times they attack other people, or just speaking from personal experience, they'll attack me. And so it's especially hard because if my ego gets riled up, then it's harder to forgive because they're attacking me. But it seems like the key is to both have the compassion to see that they've had a lot of trauma in their life, and they're probably hurting, and they're doing the best they can, and they think they're protecting themselves. And then the other component might be that I need to be detached from needing something from them, from needing their approval or their caring or whatever. So to let go of that need.
These are really, deep points from realization. So it's very helpful. And just one response to that comes to my mind is, without claiming any, I'm not a psychologist or anything like that. That sounds very wise, what you said, and well thought out. There is a phenomena that I've noticed, and which is documented in many places, and that is that there's this chain reaction that can take place in this world. And when I react to somebody else's sense of hurt that they're acting out on me with, and that exacerbates the situation, or at least it continues it. It keeps it going. And there is, I can think of ways anecdotally that times in which I didn't respond in the way people thought I would, that I would become angry or try to retaliate, which it broke the cycle. And actually somebody that was impelled to say something because of their own traumas in their life, and they're doing it as a way that they're kind of continuing that chain reaction. Whereas when I don't react to it in that way, like I don't take it personally, then there's a way that it sort of breaks the cycle. And it can be surprising for people. They're like, hey, wait a minute. I didn't expect that. How can you just break the cycle like that? And sometimes they'll come back and say, I'm really sorry, because it wakes them up also when they see like there's not going to be a reaction to this like they expected. So really good points, Subhadra. Do you have more you'd like to say?
Yeah.
Okay. Thank you. We heard a few birds back there from your Hawaiian surroundings. It's quite nice.
Lots of different kinds of sounds.
Different kinds of what? Sounds. Yeah.
Many different birds with very unique sounds.
Amazing. Yeah, let's hear it for just a second. Okay, everyone, we're hearing Hawaii live. Thank you very much. Okay, Jam, what else do we have on the board?
We have, I think, a couple of people raise their hand, Tejas and Mariam, I guess. And we do have a
Okay.
few things coming up on the chat.
Okay.
Yeah, Tejas or Mariam, you can go either one of you.
Yeah, so the question I have is that, let's say if I have hurt somebody's feelings or emotions by the very nature or habit of myself, which is unintentional, but I wanted to understand what is the effect of karma in that particular case, and how do you make the other person get over those hurts, which seems impossible by any regular means.
Yeah. Implications of karma become sort of obvious when we see that if we offend people, they lose their trust in us, which is a big deal. I mean, karma in this sense means there's a reaction, but there's how do we regain that trust? Trust is such a valuable substance. It can only be regained over a long period of time with consistency. And I've seen people who have been through a lot and they're not so well trusted because of what they've done, and they do pull themselves together and start consistently interacting with people in a better way. And in due course of time, people generally want to give everyone the benefit of the doubt. It's sort of the default nature of humans, but it takes a while when they've been mistreated. So, I mean, the karma part is when we're dealing with people and we don't treat them properly, then we lose the most valuable substance we have, which is their trust. Everything runs by love and trust. Everything good runs by love and trust. Even in corporations or anywhere else, they're always trying to develop a sense of human interaction that works. And love and trust is the most important. So we lose that, and it is possible to get it back. Everything's possible. We have a clean, we have a palette. I won't say it's clean. We have a palette, and we can paint on it as we wish. And it's always possible to rise above our current situations. Otherwise, we wouldn't be having these conversations. We have to know that you can start over again every day and get 1% better, as Atomic Habits author likes to say, get 1% better. So that's possible. And we can live in that optimism, always trying to improve ourselves. Even if we have that desire, it'll become evident to other people that that's what we're trying to do.
Thank you.
Such practical questions. Thanks, Tejas. Really fantastic.
Thank you.
Jim, we have a few minutes left. Do we have anything else on the board?
Yeah, Mariam, I think she had raised her hands too.
Oh, great.
I just don't have any question. Want to just tell you something that the word that came to my mind when you taught this course was ego. So I see ego in any situation of somebody who hold a grudge, or somebody just doing something for you and cause the grudge. And to me, it just came to my mind that it's all we need to do is learning how to really live our life with, I don't know if you can destroy your ego completely, like really without ego, or the minimum amount of ego. I don't know. I feel like as much as we hold on to this ego, it would be harder and harder. If not, easier and easier. That's all just I wanted to share.
It's such a valuable input, Miriam. I'll just give a short comment since we're so late, but from the wisdom literature's ego, this is called ahankar. So ahankar means there's what's called false ego and there's real ego. So false ego means a false sense of self. Like in business, there's this thing called DBA, doing business as. When we're in this world, and I claim to be my body or my mind and I'm doing business as. I'm not really these things because they come and go. This lifetime is very short. We're going to ride right through it. So the sense of false ego means I'm my body, I'm my mind. And when we identify with that ego, it's very difficult not to be offended because I'm living a life of preservation. I'm trying to preserve my status of who I think I am. I'm trying to preserve my very existence, actually. Every step I take is dangerous in this world because it's fraught with the sense that I could be vanquished at any time. So real ego means, and I alluded to this earlier, or directly mentioned it, that we're not our body. We're actually beyond the body and mind. And when I'm fully identified with my Atma that's beyond the body, then there's this sense of like, I'm enough. I don't worry when somebody says something about my body because I'm not my body. It's just like if someone says something about your car, you can get really upset because like, I am my car. Why are you criticizing my car? That means you're criticizing me. And you can think of this word ahankar, it means false ego. Aham means I, and kara means actions. I'm the doer, but you can think of it in this way, I am my car. So just as you're not your car, if you drive a Toyota, it doesn't mean you're a Toyota. And just because you drive a particular body right now, it doesn't mean you are that body. You're just the driver. And that's the sense of real ego by which, if one's situated there, it's possible not to take offense because, you know, who are you offending? It's just rent a car, you know, it's not what I drive. Yeah, thank you for that point. Really helpful. JM, looks like I ran us out of time. Is there anything left on the board?
And there are a few reflections on the board.
Okay, let's hear the reflections. Definitely want to hear them.
Nagma says, Tonglen meditation also helps me in forgiveness, breathing in, taking in negative energy of the person who hurt you, and then breathing out, sending relief and positive energy. So that has helped Nagma. Linda does concur with Subhadra saying, hurt people, hurt people. And then Fali says, I'm sorry what happened to you, Subhadra. I've suffered a lot of trauma up to now, but because of what I experienced, I make sure I don't repeat the abuse and cause trauma onto others. And then mine says, reflecting today's discussion from verse in Gita, he by whom no one is put into difficulty and who is not disturbed by anyone, who is exposed in happiness and distress, fear and anxiety is very dear to me. 12:15. And Fali says, we aren't who we were yesterday, weeks ago, months ago, years ago. We can grow and evolve and make ourselves better if we want to.
Thank you, everybody. Such insightful comments. It was really nice. Such a helpful day. I'm walking away at least 1% better, if not much more. And the first comment was about breathing. And I just noticed that when I was checking in, I was in India for 2 months with the yogis. And they do a lot of breath work, but they do come outside of their caves on a regular basis to breathe fresher air and also to find fruits and roots for their existence. And when they see their fellow yogis high in the mountain peaks in the Himalayas, they have this wonderful ritual that they do to call out and encourage one another. There's a phrase, Hari Bol, which means keep the transcendental vibration going. They raise their arms as high as they can in the air and they say it. Shall we try it before we go? Haribo!
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 Thanks, JM. Thanks, everybody. It was really great to be with you today. Look forward to seeing you soon. Bye. Hare Krishna.